We have been talking here. My guest has been Gerard Baker, editor at large of the Wall Street Journal and the author of a wonderful book called American Breakdown that I enjoyed reading immensely. I want to conclude just by asking my readers or listeners, I write too much, to please subscribe to In Conversation with Frank Schaeffer on Apple Podcasts and to my Substack. It has to be said commentary at frankschaeffer.substack.com. I had one last little question for you. I had just been talking with David Frum, the writer, and Tim Alberta as well, who's written this book called The Kingdom, the Power, and the Glory on what's happened to the evangelical movement in the Trump years. And I asked them a question I'm going to ask you, and that is, what is the role of the media in an age of information overload? Which we've sort of talked about in terms of all these little bubbles, but just how do you see that? And also, if you want to segue into something about the solutions that you lay out in the last part of your book that we haven't had time to get to, as they impact what we've just talked about. We've talked a little bit about the capitalist thing, but let's go back to the media a little bit.
Yeah, just very briefly. I'd say I actually believe it's going to sound very simplistic. I actually believe the way for them, you're absolutely right. We've seen an explosion of media, mass media. People get their information from, everywhere. When you and I were growing up, as you say, you pick the papers up off the lawn, you watch the nightly news in the evening. Maybe you listen to radio news, I did in Britain quite a bit. That was it. Those were your sources of news. Now there is literally unlimited sources of information and news, much of it unreliable, much of it, deliberately misleading, or at least in pursuit of a particular agenda. I genuinely think that the answer for the traditional, should we call them that, in this sort of Tower of Babel of different voices shouting different things to people, I think this is a great opportunity actually for traditional media to go back to doing what they're supposed to do, which is to calmly, dispassionately, without advocacy, without ideological commitment, to just go and find out what's going on. Tell people. That's the way you build trust. Tell people, genuinely reporting what's happened, doing it not in pursuit of an agenda, but simply in pursuit of the truth. Because so few people are doing that. And, that's certainly not what most of these new sources of information, whether it be, sharing information on Facebook or, new digital news organizations that have grown up, these highly partisan, they're not doing that. There's a tremendous opportunity, actually, an opening. I think there is, despite what we've talked about the way in which news organizations now sell themselves essentially to people of a particular ideological disposition. I think there's still a vast opportunity for people. People just want to know what's going on. Again, I speak from the Wall Street Journal's perspective to some extent, and we are different and perhaps to some extent fortunate in that a lot of our reporting is financial, economic, business based, and people need that. They need reliable information. They don't really care, notwithstanding what we've said about some of these companies, they don't really care to know, what what Donald Trump may have said yesterday, or what Hunter Biden may have done with a prostitute a few years ago. They do need to know whether Microsoft is going to meet its targets, meet its forecast this quarter, or whether the U.S. economy is growing at such and such a rate or not. So we're a bit fortunate in that respect. But I think that there's a lesson in that too, which is that there are hard facts that people need to have that determine the way in which they live, determine the way their choices in life, their social choices, their business, consumer choices, and yes, their political choices. And they need that information. I think the media, the traditional media, would do really well by, everybody understands it's not perfect. Everybody understands it's going to make mistakes. But by recommitting itself to the idea of truth and facts and objective reporting. And I think that would be a tremendous step forward for them. And I think obviously society would benefit enormously too.
Two points to close out on. One, I would like, if with your permission, to add your book to my book club called It Has to Be Read.
Thank you very much.
That puts it on a list of books that I think are absolutely essential. Yours is one of them. We have a range of books, but I really, really was taken with it. I hope we can do that. So thank you. And then the other thing, I have a quick question, just a follow-up to your last comment. You had that story about meeting a young journalist. Have you made any converts in the sense that have you been able to sit down? I'm a proponent of marriage. I've been married to the same woman since I got Jeannie pregnant when we were 17 and 18. And I have some young people that I know who couldn't even figure out how to date, but they've seen Jeannie and they've seen me with my grandchildren. And basically, they've actually said to me at some points, well, how did you do this? And you're able to give some just simple advice. And I get Christmas cards once in a while from people who got married and had kids, and it's a great joy to me. And I'm wondering, Apropos of that young journalist you talked to who was all hyped up to go do her little bit of propaganda good, um, do you know any kids or younger people who have come out of the Ivy League ready to do this thing and work for the
Yeah.
Times or you or whoever who
Yeah.
have said, I'm gonna be part of this better journalism. I think we've gone too far that other way. Is there anybody changing their mind on this, or are
Yes,
we?
yes, very much. I mean, I've certainly had gratifying responses to the book, but B, way beyond anything I can contribute, there is something changing. People are starting to say, this has gone too far. We need to get back to traditional values. Let me give you a nice story that a few years ago, I think when I was editor, or maybe no, I think I just stopped being editor, but someone at a rival publication recommended a reporter, and I can't remember if I refer to this story in the book. I think I do, but a rival publication recommended someone to me, and said this is a brilliant young reporter, absolutely
Hmm.
superb. Working for a magazine, actually, like a news magazine, 25 years old, just 3 or 4 years out of college. He said this person was absolutely brilliant. He said, "No, I'll give you," and also completely committed to the idea of real reporting and journalism. He said, and this note he sent me, he said, I'll give you an explanation of what, I'll give you an example of
Hmm.
what he's like. He said, well, after he'd been here for a year or two, when his editor called him in and said, you do really, really well. It's great that you do this reporting. We love you do your reporting. But, a lot of people your age, they're very ambitious. They want to, they want a column. They want to write columns and commentary. And the kid apparently just said to him, I'm 25 years old. Who the hell cares what I think?
Hmm.
And, I think, a little bit more of that humility, a little bit
Yeah.
more of that recognition of the need for less of what I think and more of what people actually need to know and more of what's actually going on. And I think it is happening, Frank. I think, look, it's going to be slow. It's going to be, tortuous. It's going to be uneven. But I think there is a recognition that this has just gone too far and that we can actually, it's time to start reasserting the importance of the traditional values.